Okay, no worries. Um, all right, I'm gonna call the Recreation Commission meeting on September 12th, 2023 to order at 7:06 p.m. Um, okay. So first on our agenda, we have an appointment with Paul Borenstein, requesting um, requesting permitting to conduct private lessons on the Richardson tennis courts. So let's see. I see Paul. I'm gonna bring Paul over so we can hear from him. So Paul, I'm gonna try to move you again, but you actually have to accept it to move over and talk to us. Okay, looks like he's coming. Hey, Paul. Paul, can you unmute? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can
Okay.
you guys hear me? Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't tell from your picture if it was a picture or if you were frozen. So sounds like it's a
Okay, it's great.
all right. Can you just so let us know name and address?
Yeah, sure. So I live at 22 Randall Road in Stowe. My family and I, wife, two
Okay.
kids and I. I've been tennis coach for the past 15 plus years. I'm PTR, USPTA certified. Work at two clubs, Marcus Lewis Tennis Center at Wayside. And I have a bunch of clients who all Southward residents, and basically they want me to teach. Um, you know, they I'm serving the Southward community, um, essentially fulfilling the demands of the residents. I used to have a permit. Tim Davis, and I have known for each other for a couple of years. Then you guys changed rules. Tim told me it's on first come, first serve basis. So I said, okay, sure, no problem. Um, Never had a problem. It's been great. And now it seems like, I have to get a permit, but Tim said, well, you have to come to the meeting to get a permit. So that's why I'm here. So, uh, you know, my whole thing is basically, you know, I will do whatever you guys want me to do. If you want me to do first come, first serve, that's fine. If you want me to get a permit, I'll pay the fee, whatever it is, get a permit. Just tell me, what is the most appropriate way to do it. All my clients are Southward residents. I can provide a list of, people, phone numbers, names, addresses if you want. I think some of them actually may be part of this meeting right now. And I know Tim received multiple emails saying, we want Paul to essentially continue teaching. So, I'm basically asking you guys to allow me to continue teaching. That's basically what it is.
Okay. So our the last policy update, I believe, was in 2021, where the commission made the decision that we would not be permitting tennis courts. Um, and the policy is that the courts are first come first serve basis, but actually intended towards Southborough residents,
Yep.
not intended for classes. Um,
So
so
all my clients are Southward residents. It's not that I bring them, they bring me. Yeah, they want me to teach the kids, the adults. I don't see what I'm doing wrong.
This is Kristen Laval. Do you mind me asking how much you charge per hour? for those people willing to pay for lessons?
Yeah, so I have a standard fee. It's 90 an hour for private, 120 for semi-private, and then groups is 40 each. And if you guys want me to pay for a permit, it used to be 15 an hour. That's I can do that. I teach year round. So that's those are my rates.
I'll just throw this out there now and I'll quiet down for everybody else to opine on. My problem with this has always been we have a very limited number of tennis courts, and now with pickleball exploding in popularity, I live by our other set of tennis courts, Finn, and they are packed always. And so, it's a challenge because I feel like it's not fair to block off times, quite frankly, for those people who can afford those rates. There's a lot of people who can't. And therefore, I'm not supportive still of, given our limited number of courts, plus the fact that you have children who go out there, including my own, who obviously don't have the ability to reserve or pay for lessons. They simply want to go and play. The only way I would ever, my last comment, and then I'll just shut up. My last comment is that the only way I would ever entertain this if it was actually a rec program at a more reasonable rate that was offered to the community versus what feels a bit exclusive and something probably a lot in the community can't afford. I'm not criticizing your rates. I'm just saying in general, private lessons. So I'm not in favor of taking away time from the citizens who may not be able to take advantage of such type of lessons. But that's my opinion, and I will refrain and let everybody else speak now.
Okay. All I can say to that is my lessons are open to all. I never had a problem with any of the pickleball people. In fact, I teach during the daytime slots when there are no pickleball people at all. Okay, usually when I come to courts, there's nobody there. So I've never ever had a single issue when I would come and somebody would be waiting on the courts or anything, nothing at all. I come in and there's nobody, usually nobody at all. So I mean, it's pickleball really has nothing to do with it.
Hey, Paul, this is Johanna Shaner.
Yep.
Thank you for joining tonight. Do you teach at the NARI courts or do you teach at the Finn courts, or is it based upon which clients you're teaching at the time?
No, I teach at the NARI courts, and I'm open if you guys want me to teach somewhere else. But the thing is, most of the kids that I teach and also adults seem to live right next to the NARI courts, so it's very convenient. Some of the adults, work from home people, so we do lessons like in the morning, in the afternoon. Like I said, on weekdays, there's nobody there. Also, the kids, some of them finish school 2:15, 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's all NARI, I don't do lessons anywhere else. But if you guys, want to let me know what other courts are available for lessons in Sudborough, if they're under the recreation department, I'm open to consider it. I basically, I live in Stowe. It's only like 20 minutes away. It's not really up to me. I would just ask my clients, is it okay for you if we do lessons somewhere else? It doesn't have to be NARI, but so far I've been teaching at NARI at the Richardson courts only.
Have you ever approached other towns?
Well, I live in Stowe, so I had, for example, I had a meeting with the Stowe Recreation Department actually this morning. and they loved me. They said, absolutely, let's do it, and we're gonna put together a program. But this is for Stowe people.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure that Southborough people would be willing to drive here.
Right.
But
What do you,
yeah,
what's the cost going to be for the Stowe program?
we haven't put it together yet, but it's it's going to be the same. I'm a pro coach. I don't teach part time. This is what I do full time, year round. This is my full time job. So, depending on whether it's private or semi private or group, it's going to be basically the same type of cost that I just mentioned to you guys. This is much cheaper than what I charge when I teach at the club. I have the qualification, the experience, and those are the normal standard rates. Then definitely not above. In fact, what I charge is actually below the standard rate. I try to make it as accessible as possible. So, and
But
the
that's still,
and the bottom line is, people love me. I've been teaching for a couple of years, and I have dozens and dozens and dozens of customer testimonials. I actually have a website, with tons of Southborough people saying that they love me and they want me to continue teaching, and I love it too. And so,
what about local racket clubs? Like, I'm just trying to understand all the options. Why the public courts versus some of the private courts that exist at the various tennis clubs in the region.
well, because I work at two clubs. Okay, I work at the Marcus Lewis Tennis Center. If you go to the website, you'll see my profile, and I also work as a contractor at the Wayside. Now, Marcus Lewis Tennis Center in Acton, probably a little bit too far for most people in Southborough. So most of my clients, when the weather doesn't want to cooperate, we do lessons at the Wayside. Those are the two clubs where I do my lessons, and it works great. There are a lot of other clubs.
So I'm sorry, can I just interrupt there? So is this just a matter of convenience for your Southborough participants?
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a matter of
I'm sorry, if you lead courses at Wayside and like, I'm trouble, like I don't quite understand then why your classes just don't take place at Wayside, which is around.
Well, my classes don't take place at Wayside full time because it's inside. When you have Wayside has 6 or 7 indoors courts. It's a limited capacity. Plus, people don't want to go inside if they can do lessons outside on the fresh air. I mean, it's just so simple. People want to be outside, especially since COVID. It's just what it is. So,
Okay.
Why should I teach inside if I can teach outside? People want to play outside. Tennis is outside sport. So, I teach outside usually from I don't know, May to end of October, mid-November, and then we move inside. That's basically what it is. And it's typical. That's what all coaches do. So.
Okay. So we have somebody in the audience, John Harmon, who's got his hand raised. I'm assuming he wants to join this conversation. So we're going to treat this a little bit like public comment. So I'm going to move him over and see what he wants to share. Let me promote him over. Okay, he's joining. Hi, John. Can you just, when you unmute, let us know your name and address?
My name's John Harmon. I'm at 205 Main Street in Southborough.
All right, so
Great.
what did you, yeah, go for it.
I
You get the
just
floor.
want to support Mr. Bernstein because my son takes lessons from him. Some of the other kids in town take lessons from him. The times when they take lessons from him are, frankly, in that immediately after school period where there's not really demand from the general public, people with regular jobs. Those people usually, what I've noticed is they usually come actually after dinner, right after dinner during the weekdays. I'm not seeing like the courts flooded with people at that time of day. And, there's a couple of people that teach tennis lessons there. Mr. Bornstein's one of them. The other thing, as far as the kids are concerned, if they don't take lessons, they usually don't continue with the sport because it's kind of, tennis is one of those sports where if you don't get to a certain level, you really just spend your entire time picking up tennis balls. It's not like other sports where, you can play at different levels effectively. So, I mean, it helps the kids, and my son has learned a lot from them in a short period of time. The other thing is, I mean, the only time I have seen a lot of the courts being overwhelmed that time of day was there were a lot of kids from Fay, like they had up to 30 kids come over from Fay and play on the courts, and that backed them up quite a bit. So I don't know if that's still happening, or if are the Fay people complaining about the courts being full? Is that what it is? Because they have 30 people, and we're talking about maybe having 2 people on a court, 2 local kids that attend public schools in Southborough.
Yeah, so I can't speak to Faye. I know in the past we've had different relationships with them where we partner on programming. So maybe that's what you're thinking
Okay.
of.
Do they share their courts with us?
They do. We share basketball courts, we share soccer fields when we need them. So yeah, we have
Sure.
relationships
And
with
tennis courts?
private.
Sure.
Sorry. Oh.
The tennis courts are available to the public, the Fay courts?
Not to the public. No, this is a relationship that Faye has with recreation. So this is when we're doing co-programming together.
So that doesn't include tennis?
I don't believe that recreation has asked to use their tennis courts before. No, not that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, but I don't believe we've asked them.
So they're using ours, but we can't use theirs. Okay.
Well,
I think
I don't
that's
know
a
if that's
different-
factual. So
And I think that's a different topic entirely,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I think
Sure. Yeah, but
our
that's what's
concern is-
backing up the
concern,
court.
Mr. Harmon, our concern is keeping the courts open to all of the public versus my concern, I shouldn't say our concern, I'm sorry. My concern is keeping the courts open to the public and not starting to reserve them for those that quite frankly can afford those types of lessons. I would entertain opening up more programs through recreation that are more cost convenient if there's this need for lessons. To your point, if kids aren't getting lessons, then they're not continuing. Well, if kids can't afford lessons, they're definitely not continuing. So maybe what we're finding here is that we have a gap in what we're offering via recreation, and that's what we should be solving for, not allowing people to privately rent out our very limited number of tennis courts, therefore closing off it to the public.
Right. I think you're going to find them empty as opposed to.
I mean, I live by Finn, I see them full all the time, so we could go back and forth on that.
yeah.
But-
After school, you see that?
I don't think this is meant to be an open debate
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point, Jen.
Okay.
No, I agree. So I guess I want to thank you for your time, John and Paul, but I think we're going to close this conversation, and then I want to move the conversation back to recreation. So I'm just going to move this along. I'm going to move you guys back. What am I doing?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so for the commission, so what we have in front of us is a request for us to revisit the decisions and the rules we set in the courts back in 2021. So in order to do that, I need a motion and a second to reopen that for discussion to potentially change it. So we can have a discussion now, or if you guys, I think the question's on the kind of on the table, if anyone would like to revisit the decision that the courts are not going to be permitted and that they're for first come, first serve for Southborough residents, and that like private lessons are not something that's approved on those courts. So that's
Hey,
what kind of
Jen,
stands in the rules now.
Jen, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just being new to the Recreation Committee.
Yep.
We have very publicly published on the Recreation website rules for pickleball and the first come, first basis rule around pickleball play.
Yep.
Do we have anything similar to that for tennis? Like, where can I find the rules for the tennis courts?
And say, Tim, isn't it?
Yeah. Hi,
published?
everybody. My
Yep.
apologies for popping on late. Every court, every field, every facility we have in town, just about, I'd say 90% have rules and regs that are posted on the outside or the entrances of it. So
Okay.
near specifically, you'll see them right at the gate walking into it.
Okay, thank you. And so those are the rules, not for pickleball, but those are the rules also
For the
for
courts.
the tennis courts?
Yep.
Okay, and just at a high level, they state it's first come, first serve? Okay, thank you. One more question, actually. Sorry. If there is somebody who is using the tennis courts, is there a allotted time permitted? Like, so if there is a wait time for use of the courts, is it suggested or is it a part of the rules that you play one game and then you let it on to the next person waiting? Is there like a half an hour or a 60-minute time limit? Is it time limited if there is a wait line to use the courts? So I'm just going by, I'm an avid, well, I shouldn't say avid, I'm a pickleball player now. And so the pickleball players who use the courts at Finn have gotten into a rotation and a routine that if you see people sitting on the bench, you play a game and then you let the court go for the next person to come and use a court. Is there something similar or is it time allotted or how does it work with the tennis courts?
We don't have published guidelines on that, right, Tim?
Sorry, I was trying to find an example of the sign so I can throw it up. Published guidelines on our website, I do not believe they are listed outside of what's listed on the courts and fields themselves.
But I'll add to that there's that certain just kind of courtesy that you just spoke of, Johanna, that I think has worked well to date. I mean, because I don't think Tim's received complaints, that generally as if you know someone's waiting and you're playing, you're going to move on. I think that comes into jeopardy when all of a sudden people are like, hey, get off the court. It's my time. I paid, I'm paying for this private lesson. I worry about that. I think we're very fortunate that our community has managed to avoid that. And to your point, I love hearing what you just said about pickleball and the fact that you guys have just kind of arrived at this mutual agreement and you start entering in people who can afford private lessons to reserve certain times and that starts getting disrupted.
No, I agree with you, Kristen.
How many courts are there at Neary?
4.
Would the lesson ever use more than one court? Like if there's a group, would they need more than one or is it always just one that's being used?
I think it would depend how many kids you have and what the level of the lesson would be, just in my experience. So it's kind of like if you think about pickleball, we take 8 people, but that's for 2 courts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I will say, just because I was able to find it up in front of me, that there is no time limit posted on the Richardson rules. I think it goes back to what you said. It's just about courtesy. But I'll just read off real quick. Tennis courts are for the intended sport only. Organized group usage of the courts is by permit only. No private tennis instruction may be given at any time unless granted by Southborough Rec. Players are to observe tennis etiquette at all times, be considerate of players on adjoining courts. Use of rollerblades, skateboards, scooters, bicycles, so on and so forth are prohibited. Amplified sound is prohibited. Proper clothing is required. No dogs, no smoking, no alcoholic beverages. Southborough reserves the right to remove any user from the facility for misuse. Town of Southborough reserves the right to close the facility due to weather or public safety concerns. So that's what's listed on this specific court in question.
Thank you. One other interesting note that I'll just put out there. I don't know if it was Paul or John who made a comment that there are other trainers who are also using the court for tennis, and it's clearly stated within the rules that it's not to be used for private tennis lessons. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I think if it's clearly stated that you're not supposed to use the courts for private lessons, that the courtesy rules need to kick in and apply if the courts get flooded, or if other members of the Southborough community are waiting in line to use those courts. I think that the Southborough community members can and should kind of have that courtesy extended to them, whether it's for Paul or any other trainer who is giving lessons on the court. It's clearly stated right within the rules itself.
Yeah, I felt that was a little like, hey, it's happening already.
Yeah.
To be dismissive.
So
Go ahead, Jen. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm aware of that. I mean, even today we had an issue. We had people playing cricket on the pickleball court, obviously unpermitted. So, I mean, it's a townwide issue of every single field. That's, you know, only so much that myself and Joe can enforce during the hours that we're there, and so many eyes that we have.
And Tim, that was not a criticism of you guys whatsoever. It's more the flippant, like the flippant remark that, hey, it's not being obeyed anyways.
And I think part of the challenge with this is that, like, it's really hard to police this, right? It's hard enough permitting the fields, like permitting the tennis courts adds another layer that we don't have the manpower, and like our police department is not supposed to be policing it. And as soon as you start permitting some, then everyone's going to want to permit, and then it kind of it erodes the fact that we wanted this open to the public. So I think maybe I'll bring us back, because we have a big agenda of, does anyone want to make, or anyone is invited to make a motion to reopen the rules from 2021? No takers? Okay, so then our rules will stand that we will not be permitting these tennis courts and that private lessons are not allowed. And just to be really clear, the only exception is when recreation is running programs on the court. So you sign up through rec, it's organized through rec, then rec usually, that's when you might see someone running private lessons. But anyone else running private lessons that's not associated with rec or running out of rec should not be on those courts. Okay.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep. Okay, so next up on our agenda is department updates. So Tim, let me turn this over to you.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for being late. I had a 3-year-old running by himself all over the house. So I do just want to address one thing that I came into at the tail end of that conversation, just about Fay. Fay does allow us to use their tennis courts across the street behind the church there. We've done adult programming in the past using all those courts. We haven't done it in probably the past year because the use of NERI has kind of picked up more now with the lights there. But that is a facility we have access to, just for public knowledge, just because that question was put out there. Department updates. I don't have the agenda, so please someone tell me if I skip over something, but I have my notes. First being Summer Nights. Huge success. I know I saw a couple of you there. I saw a couple of you in the distance walking around as well, so I apologize if I wasn't able to say hi to everybody. Outside of the grass being soft and a couple trucks getting stuck upon setup, I think this is probably the smoothest Summer Nights in my tenure, at least here, that we've had. And, you know, hats off to public safety, to Joe, to Denise, to everybody, the friends, everybody who had a hand in doing it. It was clocked in about 2,000 residents came through. They're thinking a little more. Residents and non-residents that partook. All our media coverage was very positive, which was great. We did hire a photographer this year, and I think it was worth it. Really captured some moments for us to use for publications, but just in general, just to get a bigger, wider spread look at what was really going on throughout that day. and a whole bunch of food trucks. So put next year's event in their calendar already. So overall, that was just a great night, huge success. Very happy with the turnout. As always, a really good way, positive way of ending the summer after such a long summer. So good to see a lot of you there enjoying it, and I hope you guys had fun.
Tim, could I just really quickly interject? We were at a wedding, we couldn't go, but I can't tell you how. I just want to add to that. Like, people loved it. Loved it. They had a great time. The fireworks show was a huge success. I just want to thank you guys. Like, we're sad because every year we now seem to have this family commitment that falls on that day, but like, you guys knocked it out of the park. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next I have was fall programming.
Yep.
So school year is off and running. Our rec after school programs, RAP programs are underway. They started today, actually. We have 13 programs going across the school. We're serving 191 children this session over the next 5 to 6 weeks. We put out 18 and 13 are running. So that's really good average for us when it comes to offerings. So hats off to Joe on that one. We got a couple new things this session. We got a couple newer things coming next session. So slowly spicing it up, slowly putting some of his flavor on these things. Additionally, we added more pickleball lessons down at Finn because obviously it's super popular, and our instructor Lisa has been wonderful and making some time for us. We're waiting on our rain dates from this session to kind of shake out just because the weather's been pretty rough. But that will most likely go out for registration very soon. We have a new range of toddler and family yoga classes that we'll be introducing at the rec department, which is great. So utilizing the space upstairs, that'll be during the week, in the mornings and the afternoons on certain days from now through the winter. So we're excited to welcome Emma Bartolini and Mindfulness Yoga for Kids into our space to be able to do that. We have our first kids one tomorrow, so we got a packed class, so it's going to be great. Pre-K sports start this week. Music classes upstairs are going to start again in the next couple weeks. So as you can tell, we're off and running when it comes to kind of weekly program offerings. Bigger stuff we got going on right now. We'll be announcing a partnership with New England Rugby. We're going to be offering a few free clinics in partnership with them at Neary and Trottier to kind of bolster their base here in town. We have a pretty significant group of Northborough, Southborough kids who play rugby, and it's like we talk about all the time, a good introduction this program, especially if anyone's interested on the high school level. Used to be Eagles Rugby, maybe that rings more of a bell for some people, and then New England Rugby took over when Eagles kind of dispersed. Cross country is off and running. Get it? We got 39. We got 39 athletes for cross country, which is great. So fully stocked team. Joe's out there coaching this year again, so it's great to have him out there with the kids. And Delaney is back. Coach Delaney is back as well. Got a whole bunch of meets, but yeah. Running started yesterday, and Trottier is Trottier has just been a wonderful partner on this program. So even with all the rain, they're letting us use the gym now this session and whatnot, making sure that we get our practices in. So it's been very helpful. So hats off to them. And then most notably coming into the winter, late fall, winter, we'll be announcing our partnership probably in the next couple of days, hopefully, again with Southborough Youth Basketball. To partner with them on the kindergarten program, the kindergarten basketball program that we started partnering with last winter. That was a massive success, much larger than we anticipated in the best way. And then that will also be our pre-K biddy basketball feeder program that they're going to help us with and work with us with gym space, as well as Special Olympics. So we'll have our full suite in the morning on Saturday, leading into Southborough Youth's weekly schedule throughout the winter. So everything's fallen into place. So we're pumped on that. We have a whole bunch of programs in the stable, so we're continuing to plan them, and we'll update our website and send out emails and update our base as they become available as we work through the fall. So, but we're really feeling good as we're going through the school year.
Nice. Just a little bit, huh?
Yeah,
Just a little bit. Quick question, just out of curiosity on the rugby, because I think the rugby started from, if I remember, wasn't that?
It was a rec program. Yep.
It was a rec program, and so now it's like blown up because they won the championship like year one and year two. So can you just I know you touched on it, like can you just explain the transition to once more, maybe in a little bit more detail, from how it started with your rec program, with the rec program, and now exactly how it's evolved? I know you alluded to it, but just a little bit more detail, because I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so it was something I inherited. I can't take credit for it beginning. But it was actually an Eagle Scout project, that an Eagle Scout was looking to start a rugby club in town, that being Eagles Rugby. It was done through, obviously, with the support of the recreation department. That went on, we supported it financially and with space. That went on for a few years. Eventually it became a program. And it grew, like Kristen, like you just alluded to, it just grew beyond an Eagle Scout project. So they branched off as their own, quote unquote youth group. Once they were kind of, again, grown out of the Parks and Rec piece of it, the Parks and Rec style of play, it was very obvious. They were, on to bigger and larger, more competitive things. So Eagles Rugby continued, and like Kristen said, they kept winning. And then really the transition came that that Eagle Scout graduated and he went off to college. And the family took a step back, and they had great partners with New England Rugby Club, and they kind of transitioned Eagle and all their contacts and coaches and players towards them. And then they took over, and I think they've been going for about 2 seasons now. And then, like you said, they're finding great success as well. Bunch of Southborough kids, bunch of Northborough kids. They welcome in Ashland, I think one or two other towns around us, maybe Upton. So it's kind of a great melting pot of all the towns around us. But they're finding great success. So it is pretty cool to think back that program kind of started, at the table with a high school kid with an idea. So it's
awesome. It's extremely awesome. And the only other thing I'll say to plant a seed, and you guys are all in, I know, volleyball, but also we need to be thinking about a couple other sports, about where these things are starting to take off, and like, do we want to do a rugby? Like, should rugby be introduced a little bit earlier or not? I mean, it's kind of a rough sport, so maybe not. But even badminton, I've learned a lot more about the sport of badminton. So, whatever. I just throw it out there to be like, and Tim, I know you always are thinking about what's the next big sport and how can we position our kids to be, in a space where they can compete. But anyways, I just want to say, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of the style what's going on with the free clinics, because rugby's not in season. So they wanted to use this off season to try to garner some excitement around it. They're a fully permitted program within once the spring hits out at Trottier. So I think they're trying to build the interest now as they head into the season. And it's funny enough, you said badminton. We actually had something lined up with badminton. We had 2 individuals in town who were super interested in it, and they came and they met with Joe and I, and it looked like it was going to work, but unfortunately it fizzled out just with the season that they wanted and competing with basketball and everything like that. So
topic for another day, but I'm I drive Flanders Hill Road every single day, Courteville, and you pass New England Badminton Center or whatever on a Saturday, and it is like packed, crazy packed.
Yeah, those were the individuals that came to us, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean,
2 members
that
there.
Parking lot is busting out of the seams. So again, topic for another day, but definitely interested in exploring that.
All right.
Are there any town programs for squash, or have there ever been?
I don't think so. No.
I have a few friends who play, like, so.
Really?
Yep.
No. Yeah, it's funny, and I kind of alluded to it passively, the thing we're seeing trend-wise in the area and kind of professionally is cricket. cricket's making its way to the to New England pretty heavily. Westboro just built 2 pitches that are a hot commodity. You cannot get on them because they're so packed. So that's why, like I mentioned before, we had people using Neary courts as a batting cage today for cricket. So it's only a matter of time before that either comes to town or hopefully doesn't but becomes an issue.
Interestingly enough, this summer I didn't see it. The past summers, pretty regularly, Sunday morning, if you drove past the Finn softball field, the one in the far corner, cricket was always happening. So there's an opportunity there potentially.
Yeah.
All right. Those all your updates, Tim? Not that I expect you to have more, but
For fall.
Yeah. And then you have winter ones?
Yeah, winter is easy. Ski and snowboard. We met with Trotter last week, I think. So we're all set with that. We're most likely going to release it in October. Buses are booked, ready to go. We're just waiting on some final details from Wachusett and from the mountain. We'll have another wrap session, obviously, leading into the holiday season around that time. So you're probably looking at another full 6-week session before the the Christmas season hits. Indoor pickleball, we are looking at, obviously, just because it's going to get cold. We're looking at a schedule with that. As I mentioned before, we have a lot more usage upstairs when it comes to classes that were traditionally that time frame that we did in the past. So we're just trying to see how we're going to fit it, what that's going to look like. We may be reserving some for lessons. We may just make a drop in or a low fee to register to reserve a spot up there if the weather turns. And then a topic for another time, just because policy is policy and we'll have to talk about it, is what we want to do about leaving up the pickleball nets in the winter. It's policy to take them down after Thanksgiving for the season, but obviously, especially last season, we saw such a mild winter and we had such a demand for people to be outside still. So kind of a topic for our next meeting to take a stance on that. I've started to reach out to other departments just to make sure we have all the information that we need. But that will take care of that. That's all I got for winter though. But big thing, if anyone's listening, ski and snowboard, October, registration will open and we will email our entire database and post everywhere that we can.
Tim, I'm sorry, admittedly, I missed it. I got distracted by a child. Do you know yet did you say the hills that we're looking at? Because I know it's been coming.
Most likely Wachusett again. Same as last year. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So the next on our agenda is capital plan. So I'd thrown this on here, Tim, because I know that they were requesting that we update our capital plan. I think we've already missed the deadline, but like
I talked to Jason. I told him we weren't.
I was like, that's what happened when they give us a deadline like 6 days out. All right. I was looking to see if I actually have our last capital plan.
I have it. I can share it. It's up in front of me.
Okay. Just to see if there's any updates we need to make or if it's fine as is.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So we are looking at FY 25, I believe, right?
Yep.
Okay. About what we had there. So we tentatively had in there the Mooney Finn soccer field. Lundblad was in there, which is now the dog park. So DePietri is scheduled to come offline for rest and repairs.
So it's that, or it's just now is the idea of the cycle to start the cycle.
Right.
So the 10 grand was just for rest and repairs that I think we pitched to them last year too. That seemed favorable. So not necessarily to Petrie, but one of the fields could be taken offline.
Okay. So then, so it looks like you do like, so I don't know, people, we haven't had any conversations about Mooney and Finn as we've been focused on the dog park. I don't know. My gut says when we pick apart this one, we're gonna find a lot of drainage issues and a lot of challenges. And I wonder, we haven't currently been permitting this one for soccer use, right, Tim?
We do it. It's more of an kind of like Lundblad is. It's auxiliary space.
Okay.
So I will add that Trottier is actually going to use it as an 11v11 for a few games this season. So maybe three or 4 days they're going to be using it, but nothing like we see at the other fields.
Okay.
What I would say if we're going to focus on
We should
Mooney and
just make
Finn,
sure if someone's going to use that field, Tim, someone should walk it.
Okay.
I just remember we used that field a few years back, just because it was a year when we had a lot of 11v11 teams in town, and there were some, potholes, so to speak, that were out there. So it's sort of a wide open space where I think you can get, whether it's erosion or just, it'd be good for someone to check it and just make sure there isn't anything that needs to be filled in. And maybe the guys who are mowing it already know or have identified stuff, but if it's not being used, then sometimes it doesn't get called out.
Yep.
Okay.
I was also going to say, if we're looking at this field, I think what's the topic right now with that facility is the ADA piece of it. When it comes to access and pathways. So I know there's been robust conversations with ADA or public accessibility committee, whatever they go under now. But I don't know if they're looking to move on that. Obviously we need a study to see exactly what can be done given the space that we have and what's needed. But I don't know if that's more so the focus that we'd want to shift that project to, because like I said, I mean, I'm not denying that the field needs the work, but the demand for the field isn't really there.
Well, I would say, just coupling this with the cricket conversation, I recall seeing cricket being played out there as well. There's really very limited places where you could actually play cricket given the sort of field requirements. That's probably one of the few. Lundblad might be the only other one that you could jam it in there, but you'd probably lose a lot of balls. So if that's something that there's serious demand about, or there's demand for, then you'd be looking at, and look, from my perspective, what that field would require is, a leveling and like you said, Jen, maybe just check if the drainage is appropriate or whatever. So I wouldn't I wouldn't be doing anything exotic there, but you'd want to make sure that you got a nice, good level, that any damage that's happened over the last, I don't think it's ever been really taken care of, substantially, is done. And then now you have a multi-purpose wide open space.
Do we, for the purpose of capital planning, do we push this off a year or two though? Because I guess realistically, there's no way we're actually spending this in FY25. We'd have to have a warrant article funding it for March.
No, that makes sense then. That makes it easy.
Yep.
So do we want to push it to 26 or 27?
Well, if we push it to 26, it depends on our prioritization of Woodward Choate. Because 26, we have the turf in there.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Well, I guess like we could at least address this year's and just punt that to 26, and we probably need to have this conversation. Maybe we pull this back up in like our January, February meeting to start maybe fixing this of when do we really want to be doing these things so we can start fielding studies or getting applications for CPC funding and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking from my perspective, from the office perspective, I think the focus should be on Lindblad. And we'll obviously get into that more about where we're at right now and what we're looking at. So, you know, prioritizing wise, as much as I'd love to take it on, I just don't think it's if capital came to us, was like, what's your priority? I'd say that probably isn't necessarily it right now.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay. So we can move that one out a year.
It would, I mean, we should have the broader discussion anyway, because, you know, we got the Neary fields that are on there in the future, and
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, we could put it on another agenda to be like, okay, so like, how do we really want to prioritize these now that we're closer to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to bring up just an idea.
Yep.
Going around this, and it ties into our later conversation, which I believe is on the agenda, about the field maintenance account. And so when I was looking over this, once it got sent, I had the idea of, okay, you know, again, thinking about uses, if we were to hold the money when it comes to field permits, I mean, this could be the exact use for that. Putting it into a maintenance revolving account to take it off of capital's plate, so that the money that we're generating quite literally is going back into the fields to rest and repair them, to use them appropriately. So there's that idea. And then I was thinking even more into it of putting the revolving account, I think it's a 53D. Again, I apologize, I don't have the paper in front of me. Where anything over 10 is given back to the town, so we can even limit it based on the resting requirement, or the rest that we're asking for that 10,000 to do the work, that, you know, the town still gets a slice of the pie, while rec still gets what they need to take care of this piece of it. So just an idea, another way of looking at that potential of utilizing field fees appropriately and putting them directly back into the facilities.
That would make sense. And something like that, would that be something like actually written into the revolving fund, or is that something that, like, you know, over the years that could slowly increase as all the costs go up and stuff like that? Do you know?
So it's the type of fund, so it's different than what we have. So there's the revolving account like we have now, where it builds and it carries, and we use it, you know, as it comes. I think it's a 53D is an actual MGL, you know, statute when it comes to a revolving account, where, you know, you could take in the $50,000 and whatever, and you could spend what you need to spend throughout the year to take care of the fields, to repair and things like that. So hypothetically, at the end of the fiscal year, you know, we got $30,000 left in the account. There would be a transfer, just legally it would need to be just based on that account, of the $20,000 out, so that come July 1, we're starting with no more than 10,000. And again, if that's the magic number, then there we are with our 10 to take a field off for that rotation and put some work into it.
Okay. All right. So I believe like this is like the what, 5th year? Is it really the 5th year for DePetrie?
No, we did DePetrie over COVID. So what's that? 20 to 21.
Okay.
And that's what I mean. I think this is more of just a placeholder of
Gotcha.
one of the fields to come off.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we were, yes. So I guess the question is, does DePetrie need that investment this year, or is it fine?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it needs, well, I don't want to say that. I think it needs investment, given that it's one of our most used fields because of the age range. So it needs investment. in assistance from what to what Public Works can do with it, with what they have. So if we're talking to Petrie specifically, I think the money would go to great use on that field to get it where it needs to be, or to continue it the level of where it's at.
That's what I was going to ask, like what it needs to be, or just do we have it there and to keep it where it needs to be?
I think to keep it how it's performing. I think it's probably one of our best performing fields that we have right now. I think that and Woodward and Trotty are probably the top 3 right now. So
And
it
they
would
look fantastic.
exactly, and I think it would just add a level of comfort probably with Public Works to assist them to get what they need.
Okay.
Or do what they need.
Yep.
So then we leave that one there. I think the question of all of these is the funding source. So,
right.
I mean, I think this is where we need to have a conversation with capital, because in theory, like we're saying, this should come out of like the fees being paid that are going to general and being spent. So
Elsewhere. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. I think we leave that one there, and then we have that conversation with capital, that this is like a line item we need in the budget this year because those funds are being spent elsewhere.
Incorrectly. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get any, maybe Don's chomping at the bit, but I didn't get any feedback on my idea with the field revolving account. Because I know the initial conversation was just, total offset. But again, looking at that number and for what the number is for, again, for future and foreseeable future, I don't know if that's the road we want to go down either. Of, again, the town would get a slice of it, but the rec would get what they need to take this off capital's list and do the repairs that we need. If that's the conversation we want to have, because I mean, that's an article in itself with town meeting to create an account like that.
Yeah. And we do have it on our agenda as well. So I think I'm open to having that conversation now. I'm all for pursuing it and figuring out how do we, like, at the very least, we can get it to town meeting floor and see if it gets voted through. But what do you guys think?
I'm just looking at the minutes from the last time we discussed this because I completed them recently. I think where I'm getting a little confused, and admittedly I got distracted, was if there was funding above and beyond what was needed to maintain the fields. That just goes back to the town.
Tim is suggesting that like this, that it would cover, that should be used to pay for the maintenance on the fields.
Right.
If there is extra up to 10,000 should stay to be used to reinvest in the fields. Like if we bring in like, I don't know, like 50,000 over all the costs at the end of the fiscal year, 10 should be retained to like double down on a field. The other 40 would go back to general is what he's suggesting. So I guess I
need to think about
something
that.
like that
Yeah.
town might be interested in. I think that I don't know who would help us come up with the warrant article on this, or like what this means, or do we need to talk to Brian, or
can we
schedule a meeting just about this?
Yeah, no, I'll say that I don't think we're prepared to, and I don't think you're positioning to take any type of vote tonight.
No.
I know you're not. It's introducing it. I personally want to think about that a little bit, because at the end of the day, the people paying for, there's a little bit of that double taxation discussion, which we've had over the course of several years. And Tim, maybe even before you joined us, where once the people paying for sports fees or, field fees, whatever you want to call it, is going back to the general fund, and then all of a sudden it's being used for items that do not fall into that particular area, is that not double taxation? So let's just say that they divert some of those general funds to DPW, well, they're already paying for DPW as are every other taxpayer. So now are they being double taxed to pay for DPW? Not an expert on this. I'm just recalling past discussions and just things that I think we have to think about.
Yeah, so I think maybe what I'm proposing is that I feel like we could have a session just on this topic, and like, does Brian come? Do we invite the head of advisory,
Andrew.
Andrew, like just to join a conversation, like to start exploring what this could be and get some ideas on the table? As like a next step.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You might tell me I'm jumping ahead too many steps, but I'm in the world of like trying to eliminate meetings, as I'm sure you are. Do we cut to the chase and bring Southbury Youth Soccer and all the, well, Southbury Youth Soccer was probably the most vocal in the past about the concept of double taxation in terms of how their fees were being used. So do we make it a slightly broader meeting?
Yeah,
just to save on time?
I wouldn't say off the bat. I think in the last year, and I'll just speak just from my end of the house, that's been made much more apparent to these groups, specifically baseball. I think it's just because when boards have changed over, I've had a lot more interaction with them. So a lot of comments have been made like, we're doing good for you, and at least the money's going back to rec, and then that turns into, well, actually it's going this. So I think the idea is out there. I don't want to, perception is perception. I don't want to try to blitz this right away.
Right.
So I mean, I'm happy to carry the bucket and try to meet with Brian on my end and just get his feeling for it. And then if he says, okay, let's get in the room, or he has a suggestion to bring back, I can do that. And then we have our budget. We have the town meeting schedule was given to us yesterday and everything. So we have plenty of time before articles need to be submitted or anything like that. So it's not like this has to get done right away, but I'm happy to kind of knock on some doors first. And I can even talk to Jason and just give him a call and see, what his thoughts on are too. And then, we can go from there. I'm happy to play that role.
That makes sense to me.
The thing to just be mindful of, right? So it's easy enough to get the revenue, right? That's the easy part. We know what the field fees are. The other part, the next part is the assignment of the proration of the appropriate amount of ongoing maintenance costs, mowing the grass and all that, right? So that's an assumption that would need to be properly calculated and agreed upon to ensure you've got the right matching. Then you have your remainder. And so the question that you have to be careful of is there's, what happens if your remainder does not cover the resting repairs, right? And unfortunately, a perception becomes that, well, if you don't collect enough for the fields, you won't be able to pay for it. You can't have it. Don't come back for us for more. So there is, I understand the whole like, hey, the funds come in, they go back to the general fund, but there is sort of a, if the fund, there is a potential that this isn't the perfect solution. So I just go in eyes wide open on that.
100%. And I think that is, I guess, with the conversation, just to rebuttal on that, the conversation, if we're entering that conversation saying we want this to be the original thing that we talked about with, this is going to cover the expenses of your field maintenance, so take that out of public works and let us own that, or are we going to pivot from that just because there is an uncertainty there? I think we all know that, just from what it is, and say, okay, are we going to pivot straight to just the resting and repairs to take it off the capital's plate? But again, it satisfies a smaller portion going to the general fund to quote unquote offset what that expense is with.
Yeah, I think it's an A and there's an A and a B there, Tim. Like A is the clean one, right? Match the revenue with the annual expenses, the operating expenses, for lack of a better term. And if there's a remainder left over, then we need to have a clear decision on what happens with that remainder. Does it roll? Does it go back? All that. If you want that fund, if the objective is to generate enough money to be able to cover resting repairs, then I think that's that's option B, let's say. And I think that's a harder scenario, because you run the risk of what happens if you don't have enough, or if 2 fields have to be done in the same year, or whatever the case might be. I just think they're too, like, I think is pretty straightforward, and folks, I think you can get people's heads wrapped around A without a lot of complication. B gets more complicated is my point.
But not to debate, because I feel inferior when it comes to financials talking to you, Don. When I look at the two, I guess from the simplest form, I think I want to say it's more complicated, but it's more of a high risk if we're going to take the leap and say we're going to offset. Because ebbs and flows of the seasons, it's not like we're charging grass fields by the hour, we're charging grass fields by the child. So, that number, we've had incredible seasons. We've had obviously poor seasons. So I feel like if we're putting all of our eggs in that basket to say this is going to be a clean sweep, you can save on your budget, things like that, I feel like we would be in more trouble than, having a smaller amount due on a smaller field, if that makes sense.
Tim, do we have?
I was just going to say it doesn't. Because what I'd say to you right now, Tim, is that the lowest risk option is to do nothing. Right, because the fields are covered, the maintenance is covered, and when we go ask for the rest and repairs, right? That's the no risk status quo option. Option 2, if you call that option 1, option 2 is match the revenue and try to match it with the allocated or prorated expenses, and you're calling out, you instantaneously have risk, because if your revenue fluctuates and your maintenance costs are fixed, you run the risk that your revenue does not cover your fixed costs, and then now you're in you're potentially in your deficit. And what happens then? Then we'd have to understand what would be all I was saying is that the last option, the option that includes the resting repairs, just further heightens the risk. Maybe complicate wasn't the right word, but further heightens the risk, because now you got to generate enough, or you got to hope or expect that you can generate enough to not only cover the fixed costs to operate or repair, the maintenance of the fields, but then you got to cover the rest. Otherwise, then you got to go ask, and you run the risk of somebody saying, "Hey, guy, you can't, you got the revenue, you can't be this. You have a revenue problem. You can't fix your field this year because you have a revenue." That's I was just trying to extend out potential future arguments.
Fair.
That makes sense. So maybe Tim, if you want to have some initial conversations, we could at least come back and say, like, I don't know, here's a couple like straw man options. Do we want to pursue this? Like, what do we think?
Okay.
Cool.
Crawl back into my hole now. Sorry, Don.
Well, should we move on?
Don always grounds us. It's good.
Should we move on to approving you to go to the finance class now?
Yes.
Was that an insult? I can't tell if that was an insult.
I make a motion.
Nice. Too funny. All right. So do you want to update us on the dog park?
I'd love to. So I brought back your questions, mainly being the necessity with the LSP, with the geotech. And Meg did share that anytime you put a shovel in the ground, no matter how deep you go on a hazardous waste site, there needs to be consultation from the LSP. Further, there needs to be permission from the Department of Environmental Protection. So that was the other string that was pulled going through this. So that cost is there. However, what I'm working on differently is the company that was quoted was Pear. And I think some of you were on when Pear did some of the studies in town. And Pear is already on a retainer with the town as the town's engineering firm when it comes to projects, but specifically Lundblad. So I started the conversation with our new public works director, brought him up to speed for where we're at, and he is putting me in touch with Pear to see if that cost is going to be real, if there's going to be something different, just because we're already a client of theirs, and they've done historical work already at Lundblad. Those are when I first finally, got my hands on documents, it was from Pear, working back when Karen was here. So, there's no, I'm not looking to move forward with anything right now because we're still trying to fluctuate that cost and see the necessity of that number. But unfortunately, having that consultant on is necessary, as was expressed to me. So that is a cost that we're going to incur. It's just a matter of seeing if that's the actual cost it's going to be.
And I wonder if that initial report, like they initially did the report for us looking at it for like rebuilding the soccer fields.
Yeah, I think they were gonna shave everything off, put a new membrane down, level it, and then just
Yeah, so I would assume what we're now proposing is much less invasive. And I just wonder if their initial report, like,
could
do we get
cover
a buy because we're doing less disruption to the soil, or do we really need another full report on this?
Yeah, so hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of the week, I'll have that. Kind of going as fast as I can on that, just because I don't want to get into a crunch. Because we still haven't signed that proposal to get that ball rolling with the grant and everything like that, as well as figure out, where the other money's coming from or expending the other engineering funds. So, may ask for a special meeting once I get all that information, so we can move forward with that sooner than the next month that we miss, or than we meet.
Okay. Okay, we are. MOD grant application for Lundblad ADA sidewalks. Is that different?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So the other piece of that too, with dog park. So working with John Parent, and it was, encouraged of us obviously every single year to apply for the grant through the Mass Office of Disability. So the question was, who has a project on the table? And obviously we do. So if you remember, we're obviously talking about the dog park piece of it right now specifically, but the other huge piece of it, or one of the other puzzle pieces, was the ADA pathways, connecting or installing on that entire field. So the intention, and Mark is behind it and John is assisting, is that we're going to apply for MOD to take care of that piece of it. So in hopes that Mass Office of Disability will handle the ADA pathways, because we have a plan input, like we have plan schematic, and we have budget, that they would help with that piece of it, while we are working with the dog park as well, so that access to the field as well as the dog park is universal. So kind of connecting both of them, but also timeline wise, if we can work this out like we're intending, it would be a single bid, in hopes to drive the cost down between the two projects, especially when it comes to paving, that we'd be able to get the paving done for both projects, and have funding for both as well. So our intention was to put that in for the ADA piece of it. It was the strongest one on the table, which I appreciated. So we are working on that.
You get to allocate a portion of the membrane cost to the
Yep.
I think the initial for that, I think it has to do with the entire field. So I actually think the entire field is taken care of with that one. So
Yeah. Okay.
I will tell you though, not so funny, but kind of funny story. I got an email from the school department asking what is underneath the field, because they need to know once they start doing the NERI construction. I said, whoa. I said, just to be clear, you're not touching that field. Like, yeah, no, definitely not. We just want to know because we know the question is going to come up. I was like, all right, thank you for the heart attack of potentially throwing out everything we've done for the last 2 years. So,
We think this is ours.
Well, I don't even think it's part of, is that land actually part of the school? Really?
No.
No.
It's not. I didn't think
No,
so.
that was the
Yeah.
heart attack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I was like, what are they doing? No. So he's like, what's under there? I was like, trash.
Yes.
Trash.
Yes.
Literal trash.
Like what's under the recreation building? Dirt.
That's true.
Cool. Alrighty.
Anyway, so that's our plan. That's going to be submitted. It's due Friday. John and I are working on it, and then once it's done, I'll just send it all to you. So you know.
Cool. Alrighty. So South Union Building and next steps. So I guess I first want to say, if like this could be a loaded topic, but Kristen, so and everyone, Doreen, no, not Doreen.
Dorian.
Dorianne, I keep calling her different names. Dorianne reached out to myself and to Freddie. And I forget if there's someone else, but she's looking to schedule like a joint.
She went to the head of the committees and or commissions involved in who have a stake, I guess, in CPC.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. Or people on those at least. So she's proposing October 18th, like a big joint committee meeting to talk about the South Union Building and next steps for that. So I guess I'm putting it out there, like, does October 18th work for folks? Are we interested in this? And then if so, I would reach back out to her to figure out like a cohesive agenda, so that if we're getting like 25 people on a Zoom call, that we have a plan, and that there's a lot of people to put on a Zoom call, I guess, is my biggest concern.
So is there a I think that's your biggest concern, Jen, right? The 25 disparate parties on the
Yep.
call, like who's the driver and what's the
Yep.
objective? And I'm already
Yep.
like getting, where's the Advil? I think the Advil still works. So if you heard Dayquil and NyQuil do not work, so don't buy those anymore, according to the.
Oh my God, that was shocking to me today. I was so disappointed.
But anyway, so I'm just wondering, Jen, like, what's the does anyone have who's running the show on this thing, right? So there's the building and
Yeah.
you know, it has uses today and it could have uses. Folks have done studies on whether it could be converted to housing. People have opinions on, you know, the historical aspects of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So, you know, is there a timeline? Is there a decision maker? Is there this feels like it's meandering around, you know, which is, you know, on the one hand, frustrating and annoying. On the other hand, it will never come to fruition if it continues to meander, you know?
So I feel like that's an accurate assessment. I think my observations of like some of select board meetings, I think Al Hamilton is trying to drive a little bit of this, but I mean, my own personal, I've witnessed him share facts in a select board meeting, and I've heard like John Parent say opposite things at CPC meetings, even when I was on CPC. And I think that the frustration across some of the committees is that there seems to be like, when there's an idea, they go deep on it, but we haven't actually backed up and kind of like, I don't know, like, so there's
not enough
feasibility
proof.
studies, but it was
Yeah.
like just for housing, right? So like if we were to, or I guess my opinion is, we just spent like $900,000 on a feasibility study for the schools. Should we back up and just have a true feasibility study for this building and like explore I guess we need true understandings of what it is, what it isn't, what it will cost, what it like won't cost, so that there's a lot of numbers being thrown around and a lot of scary big numbers,
Yeah.
and that other people say are not true.
Well,
So-
I would imagine
There's actually no numbers even being thrown around. The only thing being thrown around is this is a money pit.
Well, so there's a couple things, right? So one, I think there was a group of people did the work, right, to sort of assess the
Yep.
housing feasibility, and maybe there was an expectation that a slam dunk answer would come of it, and I don't think that's what happened, right? But going back, just to rewind a bit to the sort of capital conversation, should we be asking for is anyone asking for capital for the building? Should we be asking for capital for the building? And does that put a point on it, right? And I don't, and so does the building need capital, right? I to your point, Kristen, like what is the story? Like, does the building need capital? Yes or no? What capital does it require? Should we be asking for it? A. B, to the extent that it's a quote unquote money pit, it has a meter, right, for electricity. I don't know, Tim, if it's oil or gas or propane, or if you're using pellets, or you run around in a one of those
Trash
cages
bins,
for
the trash bins.
or the hamster the wheel, like whatever it is, you probably getting a bill, right?
Yep.
And so that's all quantifiable. That's not rocket science, right? That's stuff that you can quantify. I know I read the thing that was sent around, there were opinions on the windows and this and that and all this, so great, got it. You could have Mass Save or whatever they're called now come in and do an energy audit, like to your point, Jen, like an assessment could be done to say, hey, what would it take to put in energy efficient windows and things like that? Like, who is the body that is responsible for bringing forth the data and the options like who has the mandate?
I think they need my personal opinion, they need another commission. They failed with the first one, or committee, or whatever they call it, the working group.
So the very first group had a very specific ask.
And they were frustrated with it. I agree with you, Jen.
Right.
They were
and they produced a huge study, because I remember, Don, you and I pulled it up at the
100%.
meeting.
Yep.
Right. But I think it was very narrow and focused, and there wasn't a
And Jen,
you should go do X, right?
Just really quick, I just want to interject. I did not mean to insult anybody on that committee,
No.
to your point.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
So can I ask, just again, coming in new to this, is this 21 Highland?
Yes.
So there's a petition going around right now where a lot of residents of the town believe that the select board is already putting the property up for sale. Was that mentioned? My first question is, have any decisions already been made, or is that a false thing that's kind of out in the general public, that the select board is already putting this building out for bid?
So I think this is my opinion and my observation of this. I think there's a lot of fear around this because things are unknown or processes are unknown. Pretty sure select board cannot sell this building without a town vote.
Okay.
Right. So it's not like they can sell it out for underneath the town. I think that's just.
So there's no foregone conclusions that have been made already by select board. It's still at committee level. However, it's unclear whether all appropriate input has been given from all appropriate committees.
I think you nailed it. I think that
Jen,
is
I would like to
concern. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I want to interject on that point. You are correct. However, if you listen to the last select board meeting, things unfortunately can happen quickly behind the scenes if the public isn't aware. In the last select board meeting, they were positioning to eliminate from an RFP a couple of options, including keeping rec there, keeping family youth and services there. Family youth and services there. They were ready to nix that. Whether they say they were or not, if you watch the meeting, they were. So it is very important that we stay abreast of this topic to make sure that, so to your point, no, they cannot do that, but you need to be careful about the moves that can happen behind the scenes that would enable them to perhaps move in a direction that may not be in the best interest of the community through decisions made in meetings, which quite frankly, not a lot of people attend, obviously. So it's an open meeting. Anyone could have come and objected. Luckily we did.
Mhm.
But I do believe there are members who are positioning to want to either tear down the property and or sell it. And that's obviously not with a lot of input from the community
Mhm.
or recreation or any of the interested parties. And that's kind of what we're pushing for now.
Okay. Thank you for that context, Kristen. I guess my question comes from, to your point, I'm just trying to understand how much time is of the essence. If decisions have already been made, do we need to have this meeting like on October 18th with representation from our committee to talk about, why we either do or don't want to stay in this building, where recreation would go, how it meets the requirements of the recreation committee and the recreation department and everything that we provide to Southborough residents. So I guess it was more like a timing question. I was coming from the point of view, like, do we need to have that meeting sooner rather than later, especially if movements are happening already, that our input has not been taken into consideration so far.
It's a good point. The timing is a bit far out. I agree.
Okay.
I can go back and ask her about that, about pulling in the time. Okay.
And I'll interject to go back to what Don's asking. All those numbers, electricity, oil, anything and everything have been shared. John Parent is in possession of all of those. I'm happy to try to get a hold of all that so we can send it all. So I can send it all to you all. Further, tomorrow, Al Hamilton and Andrew Dennington are going to be visiting the building tomorrow afternoon. It hasn't been officially confirmed, but John said he's pretty sure it's happening. So we'll see what happens. Supposedly there's more questions. There's potentially of an energy consultant coming with them. There's all the talk of what's under the building, which, John has the paperwork of what was removed because it was an oil tank and all that stuff. So John's doing a lot of the legwork. I give him a lot of credit, John Parent, trying to answer all the questions that were brought up. So I'm happy to try to consolidate a lot of what Don mentioned and just, I guess, the energy piece of it and the costs associated with the building, and try to get that in one place and distribute it.
Tim, I'm sure I'm the last person you want there, but I'm wondering if you could have a recreation. If I promise to sew my mouth shut, I think a recreation commission member.
Don, you're muted.
I want to see it.
I
Record it.
want to be there to witness this.
But I feel like a recreation commission member should be there just to walk through and hear the same thing. This reminds me a little bit of Callander, right? Remember we all felt a little slighted because there was like this field trip to Callander, and out of all people, recreation wasn't invited. It's like, wait, what? Like, we're part of this. We're right in the middle of this controversy, and you're all taking, this site visit, and you're not including us. This feels a little bit the same. I'm not saying that to you. I think one of us should be present, and I can promise I can zip my mouth. I swear to God, you might not believe it, but I can, and I can also free up my afternoon if need be to make it. I would really, and Tim, it's not a trust, obviously, issue with you. It's more like not wanting to put you in a weird position because you work for the town and this is the board. And I just wonder if we should not have a recreation commission representative there too, if there's going to be a walkthrough and discussion about the building. And especially if Al's going to bring this forward as fact in future meetings, because unfortunately, and I will say this on the record, I've already said it on the record last night, I witnessed false information given to the town on a board meeting, and that makes me apprehensive. And therefore, I'll just make a formal request. I'd like someone from the commission to be there.
I'm fine with it, obviously. It's just
have
going to
no
come down
problem with
to if they can confirm the time and that's actually happening. So it's all, my entire afternoon is blocked right now just to be safe. I called John today. He said nothing was officially confirmed. So hopefully first thing in the morning, he'll get word and he can let me know. He said he was going to call me as soon as he heard. So I'm happy
And that feels, not to you, that feels a little below board to me, that they're going to go take a walk around the recreation building and not invite a recreation commission member, and then also like delay the timing to the last second with our recreation director. It's not a good way to do business. So I will say this, and Jen, I defer to you as obviously the chair. I will personally make myself available tomorrow, and I swear to God, I will zip up my lip, but I just think that one of us should be there to participate. And I may not seem like the best person, but I can free up my schedule, and I will absolutely just refrain from any comment, just observe, unless somebody else can put themselves forward.
I don't have a problem with it. I know that I can't clear my work schedule that fast, so I wouldn't be able to go.
I don't have an issue with it. I'm booked the next 2 days. If it happened to be Friday, I could make it happen, but I can't get there tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Kristen. I would second that as well.
Yeah, that seems logical.
Cool. All right. I got no problem with that, Kristen. So Tim can let you know whenever he is confirmed a time.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Tim, in all honesty, are you okay with this? Like, I'm not trying to.
No, more the merrier. It's fine. So, I mean, we've already done it once. He's come. It was me, John, and Sarah Castle from Youth and Family. So I'm not sure what the second piece of it is for. But yeah, I'm happy to shoot a note as soon as I hear it.
I'm gonna take measurements for curtains and stuff, Tim.
Or did you say, are they coming back with Dennington?
Potentially, yeah, that was the plan.
Okay. All right.
So again, it kind of bothers me just for editorial comment that they didn't invite us, but okay.
Okay. That
Maybe
works.
I'll just start painting the walls when they're walking through, saying, "Hey."
Is there a Youth and Family Services Commission equivalent to us?
Yep.
Yeah.
Were they invited?
Kathy Cook is on there on that board, so my guess is she's the through line to the board on it. But
Okay.
I do not believe, even with the walkthrough, they weren't invited. I invited Sarah when I heard it was happening. So
Okay, just thinking that they had their equal stakeholders in this.
Yeah. Is Kathy like a select board seat on the board, or is she just on the board separately?
I think it's separately, I believe.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. So Kristen will try to go tomorrow. I will follow up with Dorianne to see if we should do this actually earlier than October 18th. But then I'll let you guys know, and we'll post it so anyone who's available to come can come. And I will work with Dorianne to try to put together like an agenda to drive the conversation. All right. So next up, National Recreation Parks Association Revenue School.
Yeah, so a refresher for everybody. Joanna, this is new for you. Last year I attended the National Rec and Park Association Rev Development School in West Virginia in the middle of winter. And it was tremendous. It was great. I learned a ton. It is a 2-year program. So the announcement was made for year 2 attendees. I did email everybody the cost as well as some more information on that, which I'm happy to make public or send to whoever's taking the minutes so it can be included. But I will, I guess, read it real quick. Just bring it up. So I'm just looking for support to attend. Second year curriculum is more of the meat when it comes to revenue in Park and Rec. Strategic planning, business plans, budgeting models, cost recovery, revenue generations from facility rentals to sponsorships, everything in between. So it's an intensive 1-week program. with Park and Rec departments from across the country. And that's obviously the best part, kind of hearing what everybody's doing. But the cost for this
Make a
year,
motion to approve.
but he can get up to my page. Cost is $2,352.20 to attend the school.
I make a motion to
All right.
approve.
Love you, Don.
All right, so we need a second.
Second, John's motion to approve.
All right. I don't know what happened to Kristen, but she fell off. But that's okay. We can still do roll call vote. So Hanson, yes.
O'Day, yes.
Dumont, yes.
Painter, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's back in West Virginia again, right? I was just
Back in
looking
West
at the.
Virginia. They just moved their other school out to Denver, and the other one's
Oh,
Atlanta. I'm like, cool.
and you got West Virginia. Okay.
Fly into Pittsburgh and drive 2 hours to West Virginia.
Seriously?
Yeah. And we just found out the conference that we actually had a call today with students of past in my crew, and the conference center is even going to be under construction while we're there. So it's going to be a mess, but that's okay. So
You're not there for the facility.
exactly. That's exactly it. So
Okay.
funny enough, just side note, I talked to one of the directors out in Ohio, and he's looking to do along the same thing that we're doing with a field revolving account. So I said, hey, keep in touch.
Interesting.
So
Okay. So I think last thing we have is meeting minutes and next meetings. And
we do have a hand raised from one of the attendees. Does that come at the end after before we adjourn?
yeah, we can do that. We can do that before we adjourn. Yep.
Okay.
I see Kristen's back now. Okay, so we have meeting minutes from our 8:15 meeting that I sent out to you guys to approve. And then we just need to bug Kristen to send us the meeting minutes from June 13th.
I sent them
She
not
did.
too long ago, if you want to take a look.
Oh, gotcha.
They're in there. They look good.
All right, yeah, let's just take, I haven't seen them.
So did you drop off, Kristen, so you wouldn't be held, your vote's not there to banish Tim to West Virginia?
No, good night got in the way. I was saying good night and I hit exit by accident. Sorry about that.
So you're good with banishing him to West Virginia?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from, but I mean, I might go against that. I don't know. I need the background, but
Oh, it's his class. He's going for another
It's
class.
year 2 of his class.
no.
Sorry, you emailed this tonight, Kristen?
Send it via Google.
Yeah, it came across.
I don't see it. Oh, let me go check my. No, I don't see it in my personal either.
Like around 8:03.
It went to your town.
Oh,
account.
yeah, I'm in my town account. It's not reloading. Damn it.
So I just my so this was our in-person meeting. So I had gotten very I took notes, but you always have that comfort of going back to the Zoom. And then I'm like, oh, I can't go back to the Zoom. But I took notes. So it's fine.
All right. Have other people had a chance to read through them, or I could be quiet for a couple minutes and let you read?
We didn't take any really significant votes in that particular call.
Okay.
While you're reading that, could I just address the letter? So in our last call, we had talked about, and I was quite enthusiastic about getting together with the letter involving or at least stating our position on 21 Highland Street. Since that time, a lot's evolved. More meetings have taken place. More meetings are now going to take place, to Jen's point earlier about the Joint Commission. So that's somewhat evolved what this letter should be. We did have a CPC meeting last night, and they were still talking about one, kind of unified letter. And I stated that we had voted and agreed that we wanted to state or put forward our own letter. I had started drafting that, but quite frankly, in the context of all the discussions that have been happening lately, not tonight, but I think we need to revisit before that joint meeting what our letter should contain. Because I rewatched our last meeting, and I think we absolutely have a position, or I shouldn't say absolutely, we have a position in terms of what we feel or how we feel the building is meeting our needs at this current time, which is adequately. However, there's obviously a lot on the table, and so I actually got uncomfortable without further discussion drafting a letter. We're still being asked to do that. No other commissioner committee has done that yet. But I think in advance of this joint meeting that's being planned, we should craft a formal position. So previously we discussed requesting a meeting with the joint commissions and committees. Now that we're past that, right? Like now that's going to happen. So now it's going to be a matter of, do we want to draft a position, which is a little bit different. And so I think that's probably a separate, obviously we're not going to discuss that tonight, but I think it's a discussion that we need to have in advance of any kind of joint committee or commission meeting.
Okay. I think we can see where that lands. I think it also depends what the agenda is for this joint meeting. I guess my initial thought right now is that I don't know if I have enough information to have a position. I'd like to request more information, but I don't know,
No, absolutely, okay. Jen. I think that's probably.
Or are you saying that is our position, that we want information?
Yeah, I think that's where everyone's coming from. I think the position though is, and this is where I do think we have to, like, again, before the intent was, hey, can we be involved? And now it's maybe taken a step further to say, here are our considerations. We use this building. We use this building for A, B, C, D, and E. We need to make sure that we have accommodations for A, B, C, D, and E. This is how much storage is. I think it's taken on maybe a new character, and therefore I agree with you. We need to see what the agenda is for this joint meeting, and then perhaps call an ad hoc meeting to prepare accordingly with whatever our position is.
Okay. Okay.
Do we, Preston, or maybe Tim, do we have a list of all the uses of how we utilize the space within the building right now?
So we do, we've documented that all, because also we have this community center commission or committee as well going on, that's looking at like the Woodward and Finn.
Yeah.
So like, and they've looked at getting rid of this building multiple times. We've like documented this every way since Sunday multiple times. So I feel confident we at least have that in our back pocket. It's more about joining the conversation and then maybe seeing more of the solid numbers around the actual building and like long-term maintenance, expense, costs, stuff like that.
Okay. So I'll reach out to you, I guess, after to understand where I can find.
Because I think we have this stuff documented for the other committee, so I could definitely find that and share it, because that's also another public open meeting committee as well. So
great. Thank you.
Okay. Then are we ready to vote on meeting minutes?
I am.
Okay. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve meeting minutes from 8:15:23 and 6:13:23.
Second.
Okay, so roll call vote. Hanson, yes.
Laval, yes. Oops. Oh, I messed up the order. I know I messed it up. Laval, yes.
Dumont, yes.
Shaner, yes.
Okay, so then I think we,
Real quick, I'm sorry not to extend. It
Nope.
just dawned on me we never took a vote to support the capital plan.
oh, right, we discussed all the changes and then
Yeah.
you're right.
But the only piece of it, just because I still have it up in front of me, I was looking at it as you were chatting. We still have down money in Lundblad, the line for FY25. Are we comfortable taking that out?
I
Or do we want,
think we leave that there knowing that we're hoping to fund it through grants.
right?
Because they don't care the funding source. They
Oh,
just
that's
want to know, right? So yeah.
Okay, cool.
So then I'll go back to my notes on this. So I'll make we moved the Mooney soccer field out 1 year. So we won't address it now. We'll talk about it this winter to figure out where it really belongs. So that's really the only change we've actually made to this report that will then turn back into capital.
Correct.
So I will make a motion to approve the updated capital plan based on these changes. So looking for a second.
Second.
Second the motion.
Okay. Roll call vote. Hanson, yes.
O'Day, yes.
Laval, yes.
Dumont, yes.
And then I just need Joanna.
Sorry, I was on mute. Shaner, yes.
All right, so there's your, so you'll send that in, Tim?
Yeah, and I'll provide context that we're still exploring a few things just so they know, but
Yep.
I'll put everybody on it when I send it into them.
That works. So then we need I forget if we scheduled meeting dates into October already or not, but
I don't think so.
so the second Tuesday is October 10th. Does that work,
Fine.
folks?
That's fine.
Does it work for you, Dawn? Doesn't.
So I'm just hesitating only because there's a soccer game that night. But,
Okay, well, we don't have to do that night.
my daughter's on the.
Just Monday. Oh, Monday's Columbus Day.
I
Heritage Day.
totally support not interrupting. I agree. He needs to see the varsity game.
Yes, well, she's on the far end of the bench, so I'm just supporting
But I
them.
don't know, but you've got so many years. I wholeheartedly agree. You need to be there.
Do we want to pull it ahead 1 week and do October 3rd?
That would be fine with me.
Does that work? Okay.
Let's do that because hopefully I'll have, a solidified thing for the dog park and we can take a vote
Awesome.
at latest that day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
Hey
then,
guys, we might, sorry, Jen, just to interrupt, like depending on how this whole, like however this meeting schedule works out with,
yep.
we might need to have an ad hoc meeting, I guess, is my point. Just to put it on everyone's radar.
Okay. Yeah, we can, I mean, like, this is a fast moving thing, so we'll see what else happens too. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess we do, Marianne has a hand raised, so I'll bring her over for public comment. Hi, can you just let us know your name and address?
Mary Ann Anderson, One Meadow Lane.
Hey.
a letter was sent to Tim and the Recreation Commission members about the adult indoor pickleball program. And I guess what we would like to do is maybe be on the next meeting's agenda to discuss the suggestions about the adult indoor pickleball.
All right. So as you just heard, that sounds like it's Tuesday, October 3rd.
Okay, that sounds great.
So we can share
May I
that
ask-
with
May I ask one question? Sorry, Jen, may I ask one question?
like
I know we're not
technically
supposed
open
to,
meeting
but can I
law,
just-
no.
Just to make it, okay, it's not, I don't think it's breaking open meeting law to ask her a question. I just want to make sure we cover it. I appreciate you coming and listening to this entire meeting tonight, which is a lot of information. Just out of curiosity, just so we're prepared, is your concern about limitation of that in the future or accessibility? Like what, just so we're prepared and we can have a good conversation. What is your
I
concern?
think there's a letter, Kristen, that can be forwarded around, sounds like. So
And we can't share it publicly.
I think you all should have received it under your town email address. That's where it was sent to.
And I very much appreciate that. I wondered, Jen, I guess, for the purpose of public, those that may be listening, I don't know how many listen to rec meetings, if we could share what the nature of that is.
yeah, I mean, we can also publish it with our agenda, right, as part of the packet. I mean, I guess what I'm saying, Kristen, like short of like reading the letter out loud, like.
So I can do a broad brush of it, Kristen, if you want. So it's just Marianne sent it the other morning to myself, to Joe, and to the entire commission, just talking about the current state of pickleball in town with their group, some of the things that they're seeing with need in town with access to courts, indoor and outdoor. And it sounds like specifically they want to talk about a winter schedule when it comes to just indoor play. As you know, upstairs on the top floor of South Union, we do have a pickleball court that we put together. So it sounds like they want to discuss schedule when it comes to that.
Kim, I really appreciate that. It's just because I don't like when things are left kind of vague, right? In terms of a meeting, like we should all know a little bit of what we're deferring to the next meeting.
It is in your inbox, Kristen.
Yeah, that was meant more for the public.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Alrighty, so then so I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:58. So looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Hanson, yes.
About yes.
Dumont, yes.
Shaner, yes.
All right, guys.
Thanks, y'all.
Good night.
Everyone.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.